Okay, let's begin with yellow and just let yellow spread out on the page, expanding. And you don't have to worry about any sort of shape. You can make it go anywhere you want. And just let it get bigger and bigger until it touches the sides in some places. And you know, I usually go from upper right to lower left with my stroking here, but that's because I'm right-handed, and so you don't have to do that. In fact, you could do sweeps or curves if you want. It does tend to make it look sort of organized if you keep with a certain movement. Otherwise, you can get a lot of scribbles. But yellow doesn't show that much anyway. And after you've done some yellow, then I want you to take the red right on top. Right away, we're going to create an orange. And this is a little bit challenging. Some of you may even have orange pencils, so that would be okay to use, although it won't be quite as lively as if you mix it yourself. And let's just let that orange begin to appear. And really try to get a decent orange in these first 3 minutes. You may need to come back at the end and just increase the yellow on top. And this will get oranger and oranger as we progress, mixing the red and the yellow together. Try to avoid these kinds of lines by using the side of the pencil if possible. Now we're going to do a very similar kind of experience with blue and red down below. And we're going to try and create a violet shape and color. So just let the blue appear in the lower portion of your picture. And it can even creep in a little bit in places. And up here. And then I'm going to take my red and come right on top and try to create violet. Even violet can appear in the upper portion. And again, you can put on your red, and then you can say, well, that looks a little bit like red violet to me. So if I want it to be more of a purple violet, let me come back with the blue again. And go over that. And again with red. You're going to have to keep working back and forth with your colors to get an adequate purple. And you see I just got a little tiny bit of green appearing there as my blue entered the yellow. And that's okay, you can get some green. That's fine, it might be very beautiful. So now all we have is some blue and red making violet, and some yellow and red making orange. Okay, now what we're going to do is characterize the colors. What do I mean by characterizing them? That means that I look for darker places within the spaces and I just deepen them. So here within my red, I can see some darkness beginning to appear. And I want it to look orange, so let me bring back the yellow on top of it. And over here again. And as I'm doing this, I'm beginning to imagine a landscape could be back here. Perhaps these will be the hills in the background. And there may be some in the foreground. And here in this area, I have a light area, and this would be nice for me to keep because perhaps it would be a lake or something, or maybe a place where something will appear. I may not want it to be quite as large as it is. I'm going to reduce it down to a smaller space, something like that. And down here, I'm going to make this a little more purple by bringing red on top. Okay, so let's evaluate what we've done. We have the beginnings of a landscape here with a hill in the background and maybe another hill. And here's some kind of an opening, which maybe could be cute. I'm not sure if I'm going to keep that. But let's go on and create this landscape a little bit brighter by finding places within our hills to accentuate. And every time I do the hill, for example, the top of the hill, I'm going to change it just a little bit so it doesn't look exactly the same way it did last time. That would be so endlessly boring. Let's change things all the time. And let's keep brightening them, because orange and violet is really what we're after today. And we want to see how different orange and violet creates a landscape than red, yellow, and blue. And we'll brighten this one down here. In fact, we can get rid of that hole now and just have it be a little bit orange. Now, what if we wanted to create some architecture back here, like a little hut or something? We could take these movements here and begin to accentuate them, as they might look like some kind of structure. And we bring these upright gestures in. That makes us feel like it could be structure. And I don't quite know what's going on down here with this, but we'll get to that. One thing we can see is that we have a lot of green beginning to arise. And that's good around a house or a structure. Let's accentuate the greens. Bring the greens into the space behind. And we can create trees back here, or greenery, by just bringing this upright. And sort of free up your gesture a little bit here. You don't have to always fill the spaces in order to get them to look like something. So we can actually have a little bit of a scribbly motion and even use the tip. And this is going to create some greenery to embed that house so it doesn't look quite so lonely in front there. Don't forget about your foreground. Remember, we're trying to get a violet in there so we can bring in our blues heavier and heavier and then switch to the reds right on top. And this is going to create a lovely shade of purple. Now, I haven't been up here to my sky in a long time, and it is nice to have the sky be lighter, so I might just keep a lighter touch up there, but I shouldn't forget about it entirely. Let's just re-enliven the sky a little bit. Let's work a little bit on the house. It's not quite clear where the house is, and you can see the size of the house compared to these trees is rather small. So maybe first thing I want to do is get these trees a little bit higher so that they look more in proportion to the size of that structure that's appearing over there. And I'm just going to allow these to expand a little bit, kind of like cypress trees or something. Tall trees. There we go. That's much better, isn't it? Already we feel much more comfortable with the house. However, we can see that the house itself is rather unclear and I don't really know what's going on. So let's work on that a little bit. Let's take some blue and we can see, all right, there is some kind of a roof structure here. And it looks like it might be darker on this side because of the shade of the tree. And some people are going to be like, well, Janet, that is one suggestive looking house, not exactly what I would want to live in. But maybe you can create a house that's a little bit more structural than mine, or even add on some pieces to it. Maybe there's a shed back here. This could be more of a little cabin than really a house. Could be a door over here on this side. And if we add in a little bit of color, we might be able to convince you that this house exists. And let's help it by getting the color embedded in the foreground. You see these gestures here, they could become fence posts. And they'll get smaller and smaller as they go back. And closer together. Big ones up front, and smaller, and smaller, and closer together. Okay, I'm happy that this is starting to come together, and I do have a nice little fence here, and it would really help if we get some crossbars in, and then we're going to see that the fence goes back this direction. And we can even have it going across there. And probably should have more than one bar. And you want these to come down a little bit lower. And as soon as we've done something like that, we begin to see that our eye can be taken back to where that house is. Underneath the fences, we're going to need to darken because that won't look right if they are just floating on the top. So let's give a little bit of dark blue in there. Kind of looks like shadows being cast. In fact, we can use the red to make it sort of brown. And even in our fence posts, we could make them really dark purple by putting red really heavily over the blue. And then let's continue with those lovely greens back here, because that's so important. We have this nice grassy area, and it can fill this whole area right here. Gonna have some more light down here too. It doesn't want to be too empty. Maybe a little bit more in our trees. This tree needs some. And as soon as I strengthen the trees, I'm going to have to come back in and add a little more for their trunks. Kind of like a birch grove now. Put a little color underneath them. And again, let's come back to our original composition, which was orange and violet. And I really want to get the mineral kingdom today, the mountains, that is, and the land, brightly colored in orange. Orange really works well for ground. Primarily, we want the orange to show up, and we want that violet to show up. Where can violet arise? Well, it's here in the sky, and if I'm very gentle with my touch, I may be able to get a more rosy violet without getting it too dark. So I'm going to have to lightly coax the red over. This is actually easier to do if we were painting. And if you are in the next level up, the inspiration level, you'll see that this month I'm actually going to paint this very same composition in wet on wet and show you how you can create those colors with the wet on wet. And it would be quicker and easier, really, than doing it in colored pencil. But colored pencil is nice because you don't have to worry about a lot of materials. I'm pretty happy with my purple up there, and I'm not too unhappy with the little cabin. It could use a little help, perhaps, maybe a little more dimension. And let's do that in our final session here, and then we'll wrap it out. All right, now we're going to just finish it up by just assessing what we need to do that would really fix it up. And I really do like the size of these as they recede. They get perhaps a little bit short back here. So let's just every now and then add one or two that we feel can really show the viewer that this is a fence back there. And then let's just do a couple of details on the house, adding some shadow. And back here, as you can notice, it gets nice and green. And then suddenly we're into another hill back here, which originally was part of the house. But let's make it a hill, and let's make it obviously a hill so it's not right equal with the house. It's very disturbing, actually, if we can't tell where the house ends and where this hill starts. So although we have this light back here, we may need to sacrifice a little bit of it to get that hill to come back there and recede behind the house, right back behind the tree. And very important that we show it here on the side, so we know it goes back behind the tree. Looks a little square there, doesn't it? So have it just go off. We may need to add another one back here too. And let's just take a tiny bit of blue to separate. Mainly want to keep my hills in the orange, but we can have a tiny bit of blue here and there to create some natural quality, because nothing is ever just flat. That looks a lot better, doesn't it? Thank you, Michelle, for those suggestions. I'm glad I have Michelle here who's filming me and helping me to suggest what can make this picture even look better. And it really does help if you show it to your family member or someone nearby and you say, what do you think I should do to this picture to improve it? They'll have a lot of good suggestions for you. And now finally, I'm just going to cinch up my edges. Today I'm going to do a nice strong blue edge coming around the border, because I think that'll look sharp.